Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is Work Smarter, Not Harder with a Remote Receptionist. Speaking today will be Diana Stapleton, VP of Partner Engagement. Diana has worn many hats at Ruby since 2009 and now manages and supports the partnership program. She brings a unique skill set to the organization with an MBA and expertise in both the telecom industry and owning a small business. Prior to Ruby, she spent 9 years on the equipment side of AT&T Lucent and owned a successful market research company which has earned a spot in the Inc. 500 for 3 consecutive years. The presentation today will be followed by a Q&A. Please enter your questions into the question box in the webinar panel on the right side of your screen. All questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We're recording this webinar and we'll be sending a video and a follow-up email in a few days. We will also post the video on our blog at www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Hi, this is Diana Stapleton. I am excited that you've joined us. Thanks so much. As he said, I'm with Ruby Receptionists. And what we're going to go over today is I'm going to explain what a remote receptionist service is and how it works. I'm going to talk about the various features offered by different remote receptionist services so you have a sense of what you might want to look for if you're considering such a service. We're going to explore the tools that keep you informed and in control wherever you go, giving you freedom and flexibility to work the way you want. And I'll show you how a remote receptionist can benefit your business, giving you the gift of time and giving your callers peace of mind. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you some questions, a list of questions that you can use as you might be looking at different remote receptionist services. So a little guide, if you will. So let's start with some interesting information. Did you know that of all channels, the phone call is still the preferred method chosen by customers to communicate with business? In fact, this year alone, a predicted 73 billion calls will be made to businesses from smartphones. And 74% of people say they're likely to choose a different business after they have a bad experience on the phone. Luckily, a remote receptionist can help. A remote receptionist service is designed to help small businesses and firms delight callers and turn them into loyal customers. As a small business, managing an influx of calls can be difficult. Luckily, you have a bunch of choices. You could do a number of different things. You could answer your calls yourself, right? You could let them go to voicemail if you're not available. Not necessarily a great option, but obviously an option. You could hire a full-time receptionist, which is sometimes more expensive than it may be worth, although, depending on what your situation is, sometimes it's a great option. And you can invest in a remote receptionist service. So those are kind of the three varieties here. A remote receptionist can do most of what your in-house receptionist can do, but they obviously can't do things like open the door, make coffee, that type of thing, because they aren't physically in your office. Excuse me. So what is a remote receptionist service? Typically, it consists of a team of people on an off-site location who answer your business phones live. They're trained to deliver amazing customer experiences. They'll greet your callers with your custom greeting and follow call handling instructions tailored to your firm. So they sound like they're really right there in your office. Unlike an answering service, which traditionally exists really just to take messages after hours and on weekends, a remote receptionist really sounds like part of the team. Often people think of this answering service type scenario with someone answering and saying, answering service, hold please, this kind of thing. It is not what a remote receptionist is like at all. With the remote receptionist service, you avoid the costs associated with training and managing an employee. In addition to being a friendly, welcoming voice to your callers, many services offer a variety of features to help you manage your firm, and I'm going to go over a bunch of those today. Essentially, a good service is really just like an in-house receptionist at a fraction of the cost. So, many services use the power of proprietary technology to provide remote receptionists the information they need to act and sound like they're in your office. Most of the time, callers truly cannot tell the difference. Here's an example of a typical call flow. A caller dials your published number and it rings through to your service. Your company's information is displayed and the receptionist answers with your chosen greeting, just exactly the way they would if they were sitting in your office. Then based on your instructions, the receptionist will either transfer the call through to you or someone else if they, wherever it needs to go. They could take a message, offer voicemail, or follow whatever kind of instructions you have specified. If they take a message, they'll typically send it to you via email or text or mobile app notification, depending on what service you're using, and sometimes all three of those. They can typically also give callers a description of your service, answer basic questions, and even collect new client intake, which is a super handy thing to have happen if a potential new client calls and you are not available. Or a lot of people actually have us do intake even when they are available because it's just a better initial conversation for your firm to have with the potential customer, and then we move on from there. Excuse me. to your callers, the process is really seamless. They dial the number that they're used to dialing for you, or the number that they've seen online for you, or someone has given them for you, and they reach a friendly person who answers with your greeting and handles the call just like an in-house receptionist would, letting callers know that your call matters, right? Or their call matters, excuse me. You can typically choose when you would use a remote receptionist service to answer your phone. You might want them to answer all day long, sometimes just a few hours a day, or maybe you want the freedom to forward your phones as when it is convenient for you. So, some people forward and unforward as they see fit. As they have meetings or they have to go to court, this type of thing, they might forward during those times and answer their phones themselves during other times. Sometimes people also have in-house help some hours a day or some days a week, but not other hours or days, and they forward to a service when there isn't someone there to be answering the phone. Another really handy way to do it actually is to set it up so that it forwards after a couple rings. So it might ring to your office first, maybe 2 rings, and if someone's there and feels so inclined, they can pick up the phone. But if they're not, or they're not there, or they've gotten busy with a client meeting or whatever, for any reason they can't answer it easily, then they can just let it go and know that it will forward to the service and be answered immediately by someone else. So services like Ruby, can be used for overflow the way I was just describing. Some people use this full-time or use services full-time. Some people use the services part-time. And some services even offer a mobile app that lets you make quick adjustments to your call handling instructions on the fly from anywhere. So just a few screen taps, you can adjust your call settings before stepping into a meeting or heading out of the office. You know that you can now focus on your next task, knowing that your callers and your existing clients are all taken care of. Excuse me. If you're working on the go, you have a meeting or otherwise can't come to the phone, you can set up your remote receptionist to take a message or voicemail without even trying to transfer the call to you. So for example, we encourage our customers to keep us posted as to their whereabouts. So if they're going into a meeting or going into court or going to lunch or whatever, they let us know that we should not be trying to transfer calls through to them live. And the nice thing is that because these are real life people and this is not an automated type system, with our service, for example, if someone says, hey, I'm going into a meeting and, hold my calls for the next 4 hours, and then say your child's school calls and tells us that your child has fallen and broken their arm on the playground, we would actually call you on your cell phone and say, hey, I know you didn't want to be disturbed, but I'm guessing you want to know this information. Then we'll make judgment calls like that. That generally, of course, we would hold your calls and potentially only put through those that you specified as exceptions to your rule. But, if an emergency happens, we will let you know. So if a caller goes straight to voicemail in the middle of the day, if you are not there and you don't have a service and your caller gets voicemail, they don't know if you've gone to lunch for an hour or you've gone to the Bahamas for a week, right, or 2. But if you're using a service and your receptionist can answer live and let the caller know a bit about your situation. So they could tell them that, hey, she's in a meeting until noon and she'll return calls afterwards, or relay that you're out of the office until Wednesday and maybe Susie's taking calls while you're out, this type of thing. It gives your callers a whole lot more peace of mind. And it's really set up with the intent that a potential new client calling would feel comfortable that they've connected with someone and had a conversation and be much less likely to just go call the rest of the lawyers on their list or go Google for more choices to call. But they have connected with someone and they feel like someone heard them. And some people do set up their service, a remote receptionist service, so that the service never does connect calls live, so that anytime the phones are forwarded, the remote receptionist service will take a message. And that is another option as well. Typically in those cases, people only forward their phones when they really aren't available. But sometimes people just don't ever want to take calls live and they just want the service to take messages. So this all sounds helpful, right? But here's why a remote receptionist can be an invaluable part of the team, helping attract new customers and keeping the ones you have. Despite improvements in technology, customers still prefer the phone to other communication channels, particularly wanting the opportunity to connect with a human being. Phone leads convert 10 to 15 times the rate of web leads, so having a real live person answer your phone ensures that you won't miss an opportunity due to a missed call. Something we talk about a lot here is that people spend an enormous amount of time and money and energy marketing their firm and trying to get their phone to ring, and then when it rings, they've forgotten to pay attention to making sure that a live friendly person is available to answer. And that it's certainly not to say that if you are there, you can be that live friendly person yourself, but you aren't always there is the reality. And you don't want to miss those opportunities that you paid so dearly to create. Excuse me. Plus, customers form their first impressions of your business within 7 seconds of initial contact. And 87% in a recent survey stated that the tone of voice dramatically impacts their experience. So unlike traditional answering services that are automated and impersonal, a remote receptionist is a friendly, professional person who sounds like they're part of your team and sitting right there in your office. So, as charming as your voicemail greeting might be, there's a good chance that callers won't be particularly happy if they reach it during business hours. A remote receptionist ensures that your callers receive a consistent experience, building on the trust over time and increasing the likelihood that they will stay a customer for life. Whether you use a service like that all the time or just occasionally or just during lunch or meetings, it is a customer service safety net. When you're building a business, missed calls are really missed opportunities. You never know when your next big customer is going to call. And if you can't pick up the phone when it rings, the potential customer is likely to ring one of your competitors instead. Creating meaningful, lasting connections with customers is the key to success in your business. By being there for callers, a remote receptionist service can help you enrich relationships with current customers and establish relationships with new ones, building loyalty and helping your firm grow. So think of a remote receptionist excuse me, as your friendly switchboard, whether your team is all in the same office or all around the country, or even just all working out of their homes or out of like WeWork type of situations. A remote receptionist can connect callers to everyone regardless of where they are physically. And of course, they'll relay any gathered information in a message and share it with you when offering you the call. So answer is when a remote receptionist answers the phone, gets a little information from the caller, and then calls you and says, hey, I have so-and-so on the line, such and such, would you like the call? And you can say yes, and they will put the call through, or you can, oh, actually, Mike should handle that call, and the call can be routed to Mike, or you can, I'm just too time to take that call right now. Can you take a message, or even can you let them know call them an hour when I step out of this meeting? So it really is just like a real receptionist. They can go back and forth between the caller and you and giving your caller the possible experience. So all these features help you manage and streamline your customer communication, putting you in control. Kind of busy owner, right? And it's hard to remember sometimes. I think lawyers often are so busy with the practice of law that the idea of running a business feels like somewhat foreign. But it is what you're doing, actually. So in addition to answering, transferring, and message taking, some remote receptionist services offer features to help streamline your workday. I'm going to cover a few big ones in this segment. The features I'm about to share don't necessarily come standard with every service. So far, it's pretty much standard with every service. But some of this stuff might not be. If, as you're listening, you say, oh, I want to. So take note and, be careful to remember that as you're around and looking for other services. So, temporary call handling are necessary for remote receptionists to accurately transfer your calls. But what if you want to make a quick change, right? So, typically, excuse me, I don't know what is up with my throat. Typically, when people set up the service, they tell us how they want their calls handled. So you might say, try my desk phone, and if I don't answer, then try my cell phone, or any kind of combination. Try my cell phone. If I don't answer that, try this other cell phone, or try my home phone, or whatever. And then the instructions can vary by type of call or type of caller. But sometimes, you have different situations, and you want to override those call handling instructions. So some remote reception services, like Ruby, allow you to alter your instructions for a specific period of time. We call this status. Some people call it find me, follow me, or your whereabouts. So for example, if you're going into a meeting until 1, you can temporarily change your call handling instructions to let the remote receptionist know that calls should be, they should take messages or direct callers to voicemail. It's just like leaving instructions as you're walking out the door and you tap your receptionist on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm going into a meeting, take a message. But you can use this type of feature to indicate exceptions too. So if you're out for the day, but you want to make sure that that high profile client is connected to your cell phone, a quick status update can make that happen. Also, a lot of attorneys tell us, for example, that if someone from the courts calls, they really want us to put those through regardless of what they've given us as for their regular instructions. So we can override the instructions with important calls. So whether you're hunkering down and getting some work done on your own, you're meeting with a customer, you're enjoying a well-deserved break, the freedom to make temporary instructions helps your remote receptionist keep up with your changing needs. So you always get the service you want, and your callers get what they need as well. So if you're looking, if you're an on-the-go type who likes information and functionality at your fingertips, you might want to look for a remote receptionist service that allows or that offers a mobile app or a mobile-friendly member site. Ruby offers both. And I think it's becoming a little more common now that people are offering good apps. So a good mobile app or member site will allow you to access your up-to-the-minute call data, messages, and voicemail, as well as detailed historical data, including call lengths, caller ID, busiest times of day or week, that type of thing. So that can be handy if to have a call log like that. For example, if you're trying to decide which day or which time of day is best for you to schedule meetings, you might want to pick the times that your phone rings the least so that you're missing the fewest calls. And typically you pay a service like us by the call or by the minute that the receptionists are handling calls. So so that if you want to handle some of your calls yourself and want the receptionist service to handle the ones that you can't, you might want to schedule your days and your weeks such that in your busier phone times you are available, and in your less busy phone times the receptionist service can answer the calls for you. So as I mentioned earlier, some services like Ruby allow you to create temporary call handling instructions from anywhere, and with a mobile app you can really do that really easily. The left-hand image on my screen right now has this little hold calls button. So you can do a number of different things. You can simply hit that to hold your calls, and then the button changes to say, stop holding my calls or go back to my normal call handling. But you can also do things like be very specific. From this time to this time, I'm going to be in a meeting, or hold my calls or direct them to this different person, or hold most of my calls but put this important person through, those types of things. And our app even syncs with your calendar. So when you open it up first thing in the morning and it sees that you have meetings on your calendar, it allows you to very easily say if you want your calls held or handled differently during those meeting times. The other thing you can do is return calls from our app. So we can host a local number for people, and some services can do this. Again, this is not something that all services can do. But if you're just starting out and you're looking for a phone number, or if you have a phone number and would just like us to host it for you, which means we pay for it for you, there's no extra charge for that with Ruby. We can host your business line for you. And then when you go into your Ruby app, if you look at that middle image on your screen, when you go to make a call out, you can choose if you want to call out from your cell phone number or from your business number that we're hosting for you. The nice thing about that is it allows you to be out and about and still call people and have it look like you're calling from your office, which does a couple things, right? It keeps your professionalism level nice and high. It also keeps your cell phone number private. They don't necessarily need to know that number, nor do they need to know that you're out and about. So this is a nice flexible way to be able to do that. And then the far right screen is showing the specifics when you get a message from somebody or when you get a call from somebody. It shows the name and the person who called, the number they called from, and you can easily just hit the little callback button there to call them back. And even if you're not an app person, a good remote receptionist service does so much more than just answer calls. The right service lets you leverage technology to be more productive. So when your remote receptionist takes a message for you or transfers a caller to voicemail, some of them are able to immediately send you an email and or text message to let you know. You should check to see if that option to have messages delivered to you via email, text, mobile app, or all three is available. Also explore whether each individual in your company can set up their own alerts and different types of calls to be handled different ways. Some people say, you may even have multiple attorneys in the same firm who want their calls handled differently. So some people say, potential new client calls, find me at all cost. Some people say if potential new client calls, do this intake and I'll get back to them. Most of them say if someone calls from the courts or opposing counsel calls, try to find me at all cost. But different types of calls. Someone might call and have a question about their bill. Maybe on those calls you want us to take a message and not interrupt you and let you call back when it's convenient for you. And so you want to see if if remote receptionist services can do that by person in the firm. So it doesn't have to be the same rules for everyone in the firm. rather handy. It's the same type of thing. Some people much prefer, if our receptionist is taking a message, that they actually just take a message and it's emailed, again, email texted and shows up on the app. And some people much prefer to get voicemail messages because they want to hear the tone of voice. There's pros and cons. If a receptionist takes a message, we can have a note that says, please gather these pieces of information. And while the caller isn't necessarily going to always give us all the information we ask for, you have a higher chance of them leaving that information than if your outgoing greeting reminds them what to leave, because sometimes people just don't listen that carefully and they don't leave the information. But again, on a voicemail message, you get the tone of voice. So, there's pros and cons to each method. Some people say, I always want messages. Some people say, I always want voicemail. And most people just tell us to let the caller pick. So the receptionist says, may I take a message or would you prefer voicemail? And the caller picks which they like. Let's see. So you can also have frequently asked questions that we can answer for you. Actually, I think I'm covering that in a later slide. So let's see. Oh, yeah, the other thing I wanted to cover on this slide was that some services can make outbound calls on your behalf as well. So you can, have some things kind of taken off your to-do list. Those calls can be made to confirm appointments, to relay information, to gather information. The time that I hear most that people like this is particularly like an attorney handled elder law and they want to remind someone to bring something to their meeting at 2 o'clock tomorrow, and that they fear that if they send them an email, they might not see it because they aren't necessarily sitting in front of a computer all day long. So if the attorney calls, we're told a lot that you end up getting sucked into a conversation that you didn't really have 20 minutes to have, right? The person says, oh, well, I have you on the phone. I have these questions. I'd love to pick your brain on this, Whereas when our receptionist calls and says, hi, I'm calling, on behalf of Diana Steepleton's office, and I just wanted to remind you to bring that piece of paper that we talked about, and, when you come for your appointment tomorrow at 2, it's a very short call. It gets the job done, and it doesn't waste a bunch of your time. So that can be very handy. So here's my FAQ slide. Answering the same question a dozen times a day can just be exhausting, and it really decreases your productivity and can take you away from your vital work. I've recently been reading the state of the attorney surveys that Clio did one and Thomson Reuters did one that I've been reading through recently, and the number of hours that attorneys work that are not billable is kind of overwhelming in terms of how exhausting that must be. But this is a classic type of thing that can easily be pushed off onto somebody else's plate. And to let a receptionist service answer these basic questions. It can be, simple inquiries of your firm's address, your published phone number, your fax number, your website, your hours of operation. Do you offer free consultations? What type of law do you practice? Do you have stated hourly rate? Those types of things. People expect a receptionist in a law firm to be able to answer those, and most good services could answer those questions for you. And you just don't need to be interrupted from whatever it was you were working on. There's studies that show how long it takes to refocus when you've been interrupted. And it is, the latest stat I saw on that was 23 minutes. And depending on what you were doing, I don't think that's necessarily an exaggeration. Sometimes it doesn't take so long, but sometimes it takes even longer. Many remote receptionist services can also conduct a short intake, collecting information from your potential clients, thus giving them an opportunity to connect with someone in the firm. We get a lot of feedback from our customers telling us that they often win a client because they say that receptionist who did the intake was so nice. So that is a plus, and again, back to the point of if they have a list of attorneys to call and they've called you and they get a live helpful person who does this intake for them, they feel less inclined to go on down their list and keep calling because they feel like someone heard them, someone listened, and they'll happily wait for the attorney to call them back. So, and this information, obviously, the benefit of collecting good intake information. It helps you decide your priorities for making your return calls, and if there's anything you want to prepare before you call someone back. It's handy for you and for your caller, and for the likelihood of securing a new customer. Some remote receptionist services integrate with different software. We integrate with Clio, Rocket Matter, and Lexicata. So what that means is that if we take a message, it feeds straight into those systems for you, and just lets you assign them to a matter. We can also sync up with the data that's in there. Only the data that we should see is people's names. We don't see any of the information about the matters themselves, but it can help make sure that we are spelling people's names right and help get a little more accuracy in the messages flowing into the system. So let's get back to our original question. What the heck is a remote receptionist service anyway? Hopefully I have answered that question. It's everything you'd want from an in-house receptionist, really at a fraction of the cost. A quality remote reception service is customized to fit to meet the unique needs of your firm. The real human touch helps create meaningful connections with callers, helping you earn trust for your business. By knowing your phones are being answered by a live, friendly professional, you can really focus on what you're doing and not stress about worrying that you're potentially missing out on calls. And it gives you the freedom to work the way you want. So in the office, on the road, wherever, whenever. Best of all, a remote receptionist is never sick, never late, never on vacation, and they are always delighted to answer the calls. I was just at the ABA Tech Show and talked to a number of different people, obviously, and heard a lot of stories of people saying, well, I have my calls handled by my paralegal helps me with my calls, or I have someone in the office who helps me. And my question is always, is that what you hired that person to do? Is that the best use of their time? And do they like it? And the answers were generally no. It's not the best use of their time. They should be finishing the projects they're supposed to be working on. And no, they don't like it. For very little extra money, you can hire a remote receptionist and let that person do what you hired them to do and get the projects done that they should be getting done. So here is a crazy long list. I do not plan to read it to you, but these are important questions to ask when you're looking at a remote receptionist service. I think the number one is really the biggest. Do they answer 100% of calls live during business hours? When I first started at Ruby, I can remember actually taking sales calls that people would call and say, I've called 4 different services and you're the only one who answered the phone live. And that just seems so strange to me because it's kind of table stakes. To me, it's, you're paying us to answer the phones. We should answer the phones. That's a key question. And generally, if you ask it very pointedly, you will often get an answer that's, well, yeah, mostly we answer the calls live. But if we get really busy, then something automated answers. And, I personally don't like that answer, but that's just me. And there are a number of really good questions on here in terms of, are the receptionists in-house? So, we call ourselves a virtual receptionist service or a remote receptionist service. And by that, we mean that we are remote or virtual to you. Our receptionists are not remote or virtual to us. So in our case, we have 3 offices in the Portland area. They're all within about a 6-mile radius. And they all work in our offices. Our receptionists are all in our offices. So there's no dogs barking and babies crying and doorbells ringing in the background kind of thing. So these are professional people who are answering the phones for our customers. So I want to tell you about a special offer. So because you attended this webinar, we have this offer that goes through the end of March. You'll receive $100 off your first month's invoice using the promo code ABA100. There's a number there, 866-611-7829, which is 866-611-RUBY. And you can visit that landing page called ruby.com/ABA webinar, and it'll have that promo code. So if you don't remember all that information. And I do believe that this is going to be, I do know that this is all going to be emailed out to you guys at the end as well.